Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime series where we add value to people's lives, happening every week on ebizzradio.com. You can catch the Lunchtime series on all major podcast channels. And on today's coaching segment, we have our master coach and global managing director at Inner Life Skills joining us once again, Colleen-Joy Page. How are you doing, Colleen?
Oh, I'm so excellent, Kevin. It is always good to be with you.
Thank you. It's so good to have you back.
Yes, lovely to be back. Thanks.
Colleen, I'm going to, fall straight into it. Like part of one of the conversations you and I had was around mindfulness and the importance of that, and how to connect to it, and how to be more present. And I was just looking at what mindfulness really means, and on mindful.org, someone they share a bit of an insight around mindfulness. Mindfulness is the basic human ability to be fully present, aware of where we are and what we're doing, and not overly reactive or overwhelmed of what's going on around us. And that's really sort of prefacing the conversation for what we're going to be having today. So tell us, just from your perspective, and I know this is something that you're very passionate about as well, but why is this important? Why do we need to have this conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing, before we get perhaps into the why,
Yeah.
a lot of folks, what you've already said is already intriguing. A lot of folks are like, yes, I want to be more present. Yes, I don't want to get hooked by the experience I'm in. I don't want my buttons to be pushed by other personalities. I don't want to be living reactively. Well, there we go. Those are a bunch of whys, right? But the actual challenge around the concept of mindfulness is more how, because in principle, it always sounds really amazing. If I'm mindful, I'm going to be less stressed. I'm going to be able to perhaps lead better, think clearer. I'm going to be able to move through the days of my life with less suffering and struggle, because that's really, let's say broadly, the promise of a mindful lifestyle. But what I have found, and perhaps my deeper why for us having this conversation, is why we shouldn't approach this in a very academic, theoretical way, because otherwise mindfulness sounds like a great brochure, and it and it doesn't translate into our daily experience. So that's why I'm interested in mindfulness, to make it very real, to make it a gateway to wisdom, to intuition, to being able to really shift from the I don't know mind to the I'm seeing clearly and I now do know mind. And most folks don't even realize that it's even possible to change radio stations like that,
Yeah.
to actually consciously switch from what I call the surface torture chamber mind, which we all know intimately, to this clear seeing. So mindfulness is definitely, when used in this way, is a path to wisdom, clear seeing, clear being.
Yeah. And also, just to add to what you're saying here is, don't you find that it's often a disconnection, right? I'm not in my moment. I'm very in the future or in the past or in that conversation that we had, and that didn't sit well with me, and I'm always somewhere. It has a clear feeling and a clear thought process of disconnecting from right now, right?
Very
Because
good.
one of the things from a coaching perspective, what I teach often is nothing's happening to you. Like right now, nothing is happening to you. You're over there, I'm over here. Like we're literally doing the moment we're in right now, and nothing's actually happening to you other than your mind doing what it does. And it sort of takes over, and we kind of get so disconnected from the fact that nothing's really happening to us. Like we get stuck in this
Yeah.
other place.
Yeah, and Kevin, and I can just imagine, I'm understanding exactly what you're saying, but I also can feel the confusion for some people, and the oh
Mm.
no, this is far too. like, what do you mean nothing's happening? Everything's happening, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so to speak to what you're saying, I think it all comes down to one super, 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 super simple understanding, activity,
Mm.
practice, and that is attention. Now, so that it's clear, if I may take a moment to define attention, because a lot of folks also go, oh, okay, attention. But no, let's just, because this is everything. Because where your attention is, that's what you're tuned into. And exactly what you're saying, what's happening for a lot of folks is they don't realize that the movie making projector of the mind, when your attention is firmly on that projected thought stream,
Yeah.
that totally shapes the experience of the moment, right? So if you can consciously understand what attention is, and then consciously, gently, easily move attention at will, that's how you change what you're tuned into. But otherwise, it'll be like that moment where you're watching a movie and you forget that you're watching a movie and you get sucked in and you forget you're sitting on your couch or you're sitting in a theater eating popcorn and you know that mid popcorn moment, and you get pulled in to cry with the characters and laugh with the characters, feel anxious, feel angry. So that hypnotic power of thoughts and of mind, which I know is exactly what you're talking about.
Mm.
That's what we are intending here is to break out of that hypnosis. So the first is to understand what is attention. So attention is not one of the senses, and you don't have to believe anything I say. You can test this very easily.
Yeah.
You can move attention from sense to sense. So you can decide to pay more attention to what you're seeing for a moment, and even decide, oh, I only want to see the color blue right now. And just as a little side, powerful insight, but also joke, see what happens when you try not to see the color blue.
Yes.
And yet, so many of us think we're going to beat the mind by trying to make it not think about certain things, and not like the whole mindfulness is be present. And you're like, oh, okay, then I mustn't think about the past or the future. And the moment you say to the mind, don't think about the past, you've made the past or the memory even more powerful.
Mm.
So there are some subtleties that we can bring in here. But first is attention is something you can consciously move between the senses. Therefore, it's prior to the senses. You can choose to pay attention to your hearing, to a thought, to a song, to a feeling, a kinesthetic feeling. So attention is subtle. You can narrow it down to notice the little feeling of a hair being touched on your hand, and you can also open attention to really even sense the room, the atmosphere of the space that you're in, the atmosphere of a relationship dynamic. So attention, when consciously narrowed, opened, becomes a powerful, simple skill. And once we know, well, once we have a clearer sense of attention, we're paying attention to attention,
Yeah.
then we start being able to consciously move it. And that for me is the essence of mindfulness. It's the
Mm.
essence of being able to change the radio station playing through our nervous system in any given moment.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love it. So one of the questions we have here is, like, let's say a leader is feeling stressed right now, and what can they do about the immediate ease from that stress? Because I think we get so, I mean, stress in itself,
Yeah.
anxiety, any kind of form of uneasiness that we have at work, or because of
Mm.
a boss, because of a colleague, because of a moment in traffic or whatever. It becomes that elevated stress, right? And
Yeah.
so how do we go from that? And
Very
uh,
good.
I mean, you've already spoken to us about the attention, but like, how do we ease the stress?
Yeah. So of course, The first thing is to not do what you think you should do, and that is to try and get rid of it. Because the case in point, as I said earlier, try and not see the color blue. And what happens to blue or red or any color you picked is the more you try not to focus attention on something, the more it owns your attention. Anyone who's raised teenagers or children knows this.
Yes,
You know,
exactly.
don't climb the wall. Phone
Yes.
call, your daughter fell off the wall. That's a real
Yeah.
example, by the way. So, so, so what we want to do is first realize that to to try and not feel stress. Like you said, don't be stressed, don't be stressed. That's a little bit like being frightened of fear, being angry at being angry, being judgmental of your being judgmental.
Yeah.
It's these vicious cycles. Instead, if you wanted to take the power of a locked attention away, if you want to diffuse that, you actually have to reverse the approach that you think is going to work. So
Mm.
if I was like locked on blue because I was trying not to see blue, the first thing I need to do is make it totally okay to see blue, which means that and I know it sounds crazy, but you to sit and to be very compassionate and to be a space, to be like a best friend, good space, like a beautiful space for that stress, for the anger, irritation, for the awkwardness, for the anxiety, whatever's there. And one of my favorite approaches is a somatic approach. So the word somatic is of the body, which is that you include a felt sense. So, yeah, we train all our master coaches in somatic coaching, because
Mm.
the moment you bring attention to the body and you allow, welcome whatever is there to be there, you've made a significant step in easing that anxiety or stress.
Yeah.
And anybody watching, you just try it out. If you're feeling anxious and you try not to feel anxious, what happens to the anxiety? Gets bigger. If you're feeling anxious and you say, thank you to that anxiety, it's actually trying to help. It's trying to do its job.
Mm.
It thinks it's trying to protect you. It's actually there for a reason. And when we just give it a place at the inner boardroom table and we say, you can be there, I'm actually going to give you a place, that immediately you'll feel it straight away. It just starts to, oh. So that would be my step one, is to give the stress a place at your inner boardroom with compassion, with understanding. And that's the beginning of mindfulness. And then number two, I teach a little methodology that eventually I named, only because in the beginning I used to call it putting your attention below your shoulders, which sounded terribly fumbly and clumsy. So I started at some point calling it your ABCs. So your ABCs: put your attention in your body, in the center, around the center of the body, and then all sort of S words like stay there, share there, get into the somatic sense of that. And it's very simple. It sounds abstract till you try it, but by simply including some felt sense, you'll notice that not only now have you included the stress, or you've helped diffuse some of it, but now you are consciously changing radio stations. There's something about even 2 minutes of somatic sensing that has actually been proven to help us to switch from a sympathetic nervous system dominance, which of course is our stress nervous system,
Yeah.
to a parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest nervous system. And so even 2 minutes of sensing the body in a physical way, like how your feet feel on the floor, the temperature of the
Mm.
skin, the gravitational feeling of the body, the feeling of breath moving against the abdomen and the diaphragm, not the abstract thinking of these things, but the felt sense can immediately, and anyone can practice this to try this out. Do your ABCs, just drop your attention into the body, and the whole game changes. It helps you access your intuition. It helps you be present and mindful. So this is what we started with today, Kevin, me saying that we talk about we must be present. We talk about being mindful, but how? For me, the ABCs is the simplest how.
Yeah.
And I've been teaching this to coaches, to leaders, to consultants for probably close to 25 years now. And we even saw people improve their stuttering. I had two clients that each suffered from severe stuttering. They said 2 minutes of doing their ABCs, their stuttering improved by over 80%.
Wow.
So,
It's
and
amazing.
public speakers,
Yeah.
or anyone who needs to be on a stage, present, and of course, any leadership position, you're in front of others, your ABCs. And also, every single master coach we train, we teach ABCs, because the moment you're doing your ABCs, you're in coach position, with the ICF, International Coaching Federation, calls coach presence.
Yeah.
You then are neutral. You're more equal to. You're less judgmental. I actually heard a student once described. She was a forensic scientist in one of my classes, and she said, "Cole, the moment I do my ABCs," she says, "it's like the room disappears, and all the noise falls into the background, and the
Yeah.
only person I can hear is the person in front of me," which is what we want.
Yeah.
So I'm selling you all on do your
Doing your
ABCs.
ABCs. Yeah, I love that. I love that. For me, I do a similar process as well. But what I find really gets people interested is I ask them to count their toes. So they literally have to go. I'm like, have you ever counted your toes? So if you've never counted your toes before, just go and like count each
Check if
toe.
they're there still. Yes.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
like you can literally see their faces drop to like
that's
weird,
right.
like, and then they suddenly like counting their toes, and suddenly they're present in that moment doing that.
You got it. Oh, I
Okay.
love that, Kevin. That's a very
I love
cool
it.
it's because you're just what you're doing.
Yeah.
You'll see the common ground now. Any practice that brings attention into the felt sense of the body will work. So you
Mm.
can experiment with different things, like counting your toes. And funny enough, though, there's a little parallel here. I sometimes get people to practice picturing their foot versus feeling their foot
Yes.
in the
Yeah.
sock or in their shoe.
Yeah.
And then I say to them, when you're visualizing your foot, where is your attention? And it's here, it's in the sort of thought
Yes.
space. Whereas when you're like when you're counting your toes,
Yeah.
aka Kevin, Kevin process, or whether you're feeling the sock or feeling the shoe, you've dropped you've moved attention
Yeah.
into a somatic sensing. And that is the quickest, easiest, most reliable way I know to just do everything that mindfulness promises. Yeah.
So I mean, there's one thing I want to like touch on, and I know we because you and I will spend hours and hours and hours.
We
But
will.
one of the things we spoke about was wisdom the one day, and we had such a beautiful
Mm,
sort of conversation, and I still speak about it today. Um, I'm going to ask you first. What is wisdom? Because we all have our ways of thinking around it, but what is it for? Why wisdom? Why speak about wisdom?
yeah. So, of course, the word wisdom, like any of the words we use, can be used in different ways, right? So, I know wisdom is often like a synonym for knowledge, expertise. We say, oh, that person has a lot of wisdom about cars, or the wisdom about coaching. I'm going to be positioning the word wisdom in a different way. I'm saying wisdom is when you are seeing clearly. It's like when the cloud moves away from the sun.
Mm.
Um, so that's why we can intuitively almost sometimes feel, oh, we look in the eyes of a baby and we feel like we're seeing wisdom, and there's no PhD there, you're right?
Yeah,
There's no
yeah,
knowledge yet, there's no language. Even sometimes someone can look into the eyes of an animal and they'll say that there's this intuition that there's wisdom. So for clarity purposes, let's say that wisdom is clear seeing, which means that anything we do to help ourselves to see more clearly gives us access to wisdom. And therefore, we have to perhaps first admit that often we're not seeing clearly, that there is a clouded seeing, and then become curious, interested if it speaks to us, if it resonates with us. Well, how do we see clearly, and what is that experience of clear seeing? And I think the moment we invite more of that into our lives, it's for me, it's like being in a desert and being the dying of thirst and scratching in the dust and finally breaking through to find that clear water and to build a well around that so that we can access that water of wisdom and even draw on that water and use it to nourish, use it to cleanse, use it to grow the garden of our lives, which is the metaphor that I use. Because for me, that is the power of somatically heavy, tight, suffering, stress, to the moment we see clearly. There's actually a way to tell, by the way. There's a way to tell if wisdom has arrived, if clear seeing has arrived. We move from a contracted state to an open state, which some people will describe as relief, some people will describe as a lightness, but it's a somatically felt experience. That's why we call it an aha moment. That's why we joke when we say lighten up, or whatever. But so wisdom is clear seeing that opens any space.
One of the things one of the words you use now was invite. You have to invite that clarity and that wisdom to you. I think that's so important, because I think so many people, they live amongst, to me, it's like living with your strain, your stress, your identity of, who am I without the strain and the stress and the problems? Who am I with am I just like, when I'm not those things, who am I then? Right. So to invite a moment of clarity and identity of me without those things, right? And I think that's such an important brain shift and a brain frame for us to get on board with, because we simply don't. We identify ourselves with stressed and busy and tired and all these things, and it becomes part of your identity, which is not useful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, so the word invite, another helpful word is to be curious. And of course, for anyone who is familiar with master coaching competencies as defined globally, the more you are the more you're able to coach at a master level. And we mark assessments all the time, and we have to distinguish like an associate level coach from a professional to a master coach. And one of the ways we distinguish that is this tone of invitation, of curiosity, and being comfortable in the unknown and the discovering. So it's interesting, the parallel here between how we coach others and how we bring wisdom into our own lives. That when we are too rigid, too much of a formula, too much of a performance and a holding on and a clinging to a previous concept, the less skillful we are in coaching, and the less skillful we are in inviting wisdom. So yes, it's invite, it's curious, it's discovery, And therefore, it does take a certain amount of courage, I would say. It's a little bit, because it's the courage to see deeper. It's the courage to discover something you might not have seen before. This is going to sound like an odd metaphor here, but the mind, for me, the mind creates Post-its, right? It makes sticky notes. Let's not use a brand, right? It makes sticky notes for everything. So it's labeling everything with sticky notes. So it has an odd image. But you imagine walking around your home, imagine walking around your garden, and there's like sticky notes everywhere because your mind is just labeling, that's a door, that's my office, or that's my home, that's a tree. Wisdom is the invitation to look beyond the sticky note. Is there a tree behind the sticky note that I've never discovered because I own, back to the attention conversation, because my attention was on the sticky note, not on the tree. And now we shifted to something that you planted a little seed now, thinking about who we are, our identity. Is my identity a sticky note that I've got my attention on? Or am I inviting myself courageously to look deeper than the sticky note for who I truly am? And that is, of course, what wisdom can bring. It can bring, oh my gosh, the freedom of that, the freedom of a life of thinking that my whole world is a bunch of sticky notes. In other words, thoughts.
Yeah.
And of course, then I also say to people, have we ever met each other? Or are we just meeting our thoughts about each other? Are we meeting our sticky notes? So when I was young, because I had a tumor, Kevin, when I was 4, the giant,
Oh, wow.
the forming tumor on my face. So
Sure.
when that was removed, I still walked around feeling like I had a tumor on my face. And my sticky notes that were everywhere were informed by that previous experience. So that contraction of the fear of that became the defining identity. And I would even say, I am shy, right? So one of my sticky notes was, I'm shy. And it took courage and a lot of work to look deeper for wisdom, to take the cloud away from that sun, to look deeper than the sticky note, and to feel into a new relationship with who I am, what I call new seeing and new being, or true seeing, true being. And to realize, oh my word, shyness, that label, it's just a contraction in my somatic felt sense of who I am, but it's in me, I'm not in it. And then I became more interested in what was the space in which the shyness showed up. And the moment I discovered the space, the more, like the room of me, instead of this little part of me, I was able to change what my attention was on, and therefore discover, oh wow, there is actually something here. There is a me, there's a self that is not shy, that feels a lot of love for people instead of fear. And that powerfully transformed the shyness.
Yeah, I mean, with all the questions you're answering right now, like the next part of this questioning that I want to ask is it possible for anyone to access their inner wisdom? And I think the way that you've just summed it up is, to look beyond that sticky note, and because there is so much more. And for me, I always find it fascinating when people go, I am shy, I am, I can't do this, I'm this person, I've been like this all my life. And
Yeah.
part of my question in my head is like, I wonder how that feels to kind of label it so specifically, because part of me doing what I do, and the love for what I do is the pure potential possibility of what if.
What
You know,
if?
what
Yeah.
if I wasn't just that sticky note, and what if I was actually paying attention to it from a point of becoming curious and looking at that emotion that arises when I'm having an emotion, and sort
Yeah.
of being curious and wanting to activate and sort of see past it, so I think it sort of encompasses everything you're saying. I love that. But I mean, one of the questions that is here is, how does meditation differ to mindfulness? I think that's also a nice.
Yeah, of course we're playing with words, but that's quite delicious.
Mm.
And let's look past the sticky notes of the words. And let's look for what they could be, the possibilities, the what ifs, yes. So of
Yeah.
course meditation can be something quite useful but surface. It can be about um, well, I say surface and I don't mean to demean it, right? But meditation can be light. It can be a little visualization in the morning to focus on having a positive day, that kind of thing. Um, or meditation can be grueling, where we bump into the inner obstacles, those rocks on the way to the water of our wisdom. And then of course meditation can be ultimately used for finding wisdom. So the way I like to think of meditation versus mindfulness is they really do start to mix. My only distinguishing factor is meditation. I'm closing my eyes, possibly I'm dedicating some time, and I'm sending that bucket very much inwardly for clear seeing. And then mindfulness for me feels like the daily practice of that. When I'm standing waiting to pay a ticket for a parking at a shopping mall. In fact, I'm remembering a story of when I was in my 20s, rushing towards a parking, one of those pay places. I was late and I saw the one was out of order. There was only one available. Started rushing towards it, thinking, "Good, I'm first. There's no one there." And then this guy cut in front of me, and my sticky note mind, my judgmental mind, started getting really angry, judging him. He was dressed in a suit, and I was imagining all sorts of horrid things about this man. And he just nipped in front of me. Now he's standing in front of me. Next minute, there's 10, 12 people behind us, and you could feel the pressure of all these people. So right then, I'm not sort of meditating, but there's a blurry edge. So it's an opportunity to be mindful. So the first thing I'm mindful of is that my whole body's gone into a contracted state, which tells me that's my little red flag. That's my clue, my Sherlock Holmes clue, that whatever I'm tuned into right now is not wisdom. It's the cloud, not the sun. It's the sticky note, not the real. So the contraction and openness is my compass, Kevin. So I notice this contracted state. Now, of course, I can stay there, and I've been known to say I feel like it. So don't want wisdom right now. Just want to be grumpy.
Yes.
I remember
Leave me
doing that.
alone.
Yeah. I just want don't make me. The little teenager in my brain. Don't make me. I don't want to be wise. Just want to be
Yeah.
grumpy.
Yeah.
But in that moment, there was this little reminding. There was this interest in, hang on, because I'm like burning my eyes into the man's skull, with you pushed in the queue, and now I'm watching him fumbling for a coin, and he puts the coin in, and it falls all the way through, and he's starting to shake, and he's tried it about 3 times now, and I'm now inviting my ABCs, right? I'm putting attention in my body, in my
Yeah.
center, and I'm setting that curious intention. And my favorite question, my favorite bucket to send into the wisdom well is, what's the deeper truth? and being completely unattached to what that is. Because the mind, of course, will say, oh, I hope the deeper truth is that I'm right, he's wrong. You know,
Substantiate myself. Yes.
yeah, some sort of ego thing going on. And it's just an invitation. I'd be willing. I'm willing. I'm interested. I'm sincerely wanting to know what is the deeper truth right now. And what sometimes happens is there's sometimes an insight. Other times there's just a shift from closed to open. And then I notice the openness and I become curious to, I call it translating wisdom. Now I want to translate, what does this openness mean, so that I can benefit and almost coach or teach my own mind, my own sticky notes, right? And it was just, he just suddenly felt like my brother. I know this sounds like really odd, but he went from enemy, burn holes in the back of his skull with anger, hoping the crowd behind me join me in this whole thing,
Yeah.
to he now feels like my brother. So when his coin for the fifth or sixth time wasn't working and he was patting and trying to find money, I just opened my purse, handed him money. He looked at me surprised, took the money, put it in, it worked, then looked and he said, I'm sorry, I can't pay you back. And I said, no problem. And he walked away. It was like such a simple human moment. He walked away. I stepped to now pay for my ticket. He stopped. He turned around. He came back and he says to me, he said, that whole stressful moment was worth it just to meet you. And I said, oh, it's such a pleasure. Lovely to meet you too. And he walked away, stranger, never to see again. Nothing Hollywood, nothing profound.
Yeah.
But in one moment, we can shift from a closed, contracted state to mindfully inviting, with ABCs to help, inviting what is the deeper truth here.
Mm.
And it can change everything, Kevin. Yeah.
And this literally happens in seconds.
Yes.
Like this conversation you're sharing is not 15 minutes long. This is literally happening within minutes, and you're standing there and going, what is the deeper truth? And he's throwing the coin, and all of that is just happening in seconds. So this is not something that you need to to have this big moment about. You could just literally have the mindfulness of that moment,
Yes.
and within minutes, with sometimes in seconds, you got it, and it shifts,
Exactly.
it changes, it moves, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know that we're running out of time fast, but before we do, I really need to talk to you about this. The last time we spoke about it is flow. Just that, and what you shared with us now, I think that sort of lends itself. But one of the conversations I said to you was, for me, I often feel that I need to be around. You speak about that heavy feeling that you need to kind of get rid of, and you notice that. For me, it's being around open space, trees, grass, being outside in nature. And the one day you mentioned, where I said the flow of when I'm feeling in flow is when I'm close to nature. And you put it so beautifully around, that's when the universe, and you use the words when you speak about the universe, points back in on you, and it flows back towards you, right? Because we're constantly out there giving of ourselves and sharing and sharing and sharing. Don't you just want to just wrap up this fantastic conversation with some flow? Because I think it's just so beautiful to speak of, and a lot of people, there's a lot of gurus out there that speak about being in the state of flow and what happens when you're in flow. And so people, they have a nuance or a sense of it, but we don't often speak enough. I don't think we speak about it enough.
You're so right, Kevin. It's like a conversation can flow or it doesn't. A relationship can flow or it doesn't. Our cash can even flow or not. And a day can feel like it's flowing, or it can feel like it's just pushing water uphill. So So the first thing to connect to some of what we were saying earlier is like a pipe can be open or closed. So that's first, notice this open or closedness and keep looking for clarity that opens you, because that's now going to give you the opportunity for a flow. Yeah, because you can't, nothing can flow through a closed pipe. Like, yeah. Okay, say now if it's open, the flow is life itself for me, right? The flow is life. And in fact, how I test intuitively or just navigate my life intuitively around like what to-do list item to tackle first today, or is I'm looking for where that flow is. I'm plugging into as much of that open, true, clear seeing as I can, supporting myself through the shift from closed to open. And then I'm looking for that flow. And the reason nature, I think nature gives us that openness actually is because when you're putting your attention on nature, you're putting your attention on something that doesn't have a mind, that cannot be closed, right? So you're almost tuning into that universal openness. And so it's deeply restorative. Now, I would like to suggest that beyond all sticky notes is that openness. A little bit more challenging to get deeper than the sticky notes in our daily lives. Therefore, more challenging to get into that flow in our daily lives because attention is stuck on the sticky notes. So, simple example, you have a thought that says, oh, I need to make money, or I need to make more money. Now, this is like a joke I had with myself once because I was busy stressing on a Monday as an entrepreneur. I mean, I've had, fortunately, my business done really well, especially in the last 5 to 10 years. But still, I need to make more money. I need to make more money. And I sat down and noticed my body was really contracted. And then I thought, hang on, that's because something about it, I'm not seeing this clearly. There's some wisdom needed here. So there's no flow here. There can't be because it's closed.
Yeah.
Analyzed the question, realized the question was the problem. Or the intention was the problem. I need to make more money. Every single word, I need to make, the words were the problem. And the joke or the clear seeing was it's illegal to make money. You're not even allowed to make money as in printed in your garage, right? So at the moment I changed the question to how do I create ways to earn money, the openness happened, and you can actually feel now there's space for flow. There's space for the flow of inspiration, ideas, solutions, creativity. And you and I know, Kevin, it's like the highest function of a coach when a coach is really skilled to do that, to actually shift people from that closed state to an open state where now their life can flow again. They can take action. They can, the inner and the outer, right? The inner flow of inspiration, creativity, esteem, just a rich sense of self. And the outer, as in making our way through this very difficult thing called life, relationships, finances, career, etc. So, yeah, invite the flow and use the open close, the mindfulness of open and closed as a baseline how to calibration tool. How's that?
I love it. I love it. I love it. And that's why I wanted you just to end off with that note, because I think, speaking about the mindfulness, speaking about the attention, speaking about the sticky notes, going deeper into the wisdom well, and finding all of that and having the cognizance and having a self conversation. I think, people do it instinctively. Driving in the traffic, you're having a self conversation. Reading a book, although you're reading a book, part of your brain's sometimes having that self conversation. Or you're just sitting in the morning having that coffee, you're having that self conversation. And I think in all those moments, you have an opportunity to really just do the ABCs and really go into yourself and really just solidify and be intentional, about your attention,
Yes.
and where you're focused and what your day could potentially, turn out to be.
Yeah. And ultimately, where that all leads, Kevin, if one continues down that rabbit hole, is pure freedom, because there could be the possibility of realizing that what we truly are is the openness that never closes, and that we are the flow itself, and that within us is a mind that opens and closes, a heart that opens and closes, the gut that opens and closes, the seasons of life that move, but that there can be even this deep self-realization, not as a theory, but as a real knowing. And then with that can even come the beautiful question that I ask myself pretty much every day for work, as a parent, as a coach, as a teacher: how does love want to move today? Because it turns out that love, not romantic love, obviously, this impersonal, deep movement of life, is love moving through the open space of the self.
Yeah. Cole, I just love it. I love how you put it together. I love how you make me think. It's just fantastic to have you.
Delicious. It's
It is.
pudding, Kevin.
It is. And it's always when someone speaks my language, it's like a tuning fork. Like,
Mhm.
I like resonate, and my body gets like excited, and
Well,
it's amazing.
wisdom recognizes wisdom, Kevin. Water knows water. It's true, right?
That's true. I absolutely agree. Cole, if we want to get hold of you, where do we go? What's the quickest way to
Oh,
get hold of you?
Colleen-Joy.com or innerlifeskills.com. Yeah.
Guys, go and check it out. Obviously, we're going to put all the links on the description boxes below. You can catch the Lunchtime series on all major podcast channels and on eBiz Radio every Wednesday and Thursday, guys. Colleen-Joy Page, thank you for being here, and I appreciate you.
Such a pleasure, Kevin. Thank you.
Cheers for now.
Bye.